Fans in any sport aren't willing to wait for anything nowadays. They want a player to be that right now, the moment he takes the field. If you take him in the first round, he needs to be a baller right now, or he sucks, or the coaches suck, or the program sucks. Welcome to the Indy Drills Podcast. It's a DB podcast. Happy to have you guys here with me. Going to talk some defense today, some DB stuff. This has to be the only DB podcast out there. If I'm wrong, you guys hit me in the comment section and let me know where the other DB podcasts are. I have not been able to find them. So I'd love to know where they are. I'd like to check them out and see what's good with them. If you're here, and if you're watching or listening to this, I appreciate it. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you're into DB stuff and trying to learn about defensive backs and have defensive back discussions, secondary discussions, just defensive discussions at all, go ahead and hit the like button and also subscribe, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on your streaming device, so you don't miss out on another one like this. All right. Also sponsored by 101 DB Tips. Oh, by the way, it's a book that I've written never mind. All right. 101 DB Tips. If you're a defensive back or you coach defensive backs, you need to have a copy of this book right here. It covers just about everything there is out there to cover about defensive back play, whether that's playing corner or safety, nickel back, how to train in the offseason, how to watch film, stuff on footwork, bunch of stuff in here. And I just released version 2, which has 100 passing terms that you need to know. All right. A glossary of terms. This is so valuable, especially for you guys that get playbooks. And there's a bunch of terminology in there that you just have never heard before, can't understand. This is a great thing for you to have. Then also have pages in there for notes. So version 2 is out. So you get 101 DB tips, plus you get 100 passing terms that you need to know. This is an absolute game changer. All right. If I'd had something like this as I was coming up, I'd been that much better. I might have had a gold jacket by now. So if you're out there, you play DB, coach DBs, train DBs, get yourself a copy of this right now. 101 DB Tips. Have a link to it in the description down below. But let's just jump right into it. What's in the news? The NFL Combine just came and went. And of course, they're running fast. And everyone gets caught up in all of the physical stuff this time of year. And why not? That's what's getting put out there in front of us. That's what's getting marketed by the NFL. And so, yes, we should dive all in. 40-yard dash times are all the rage around this time of the year. They want to know who's fast because we love all that stuff. And I'm not throwing it off to the side. Yes, it does really, really help to be athletic and fast to play this position and play this game. But it is not everything. So let's just talk about 40-yard dashes from the defensive back standpoint. And I'll give you guys some perspective that I have of it. Who are our fastest guys at this combine? Number 1 on that list was Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, ran a 4.28 40. Darian Porter from Iowa State, 4.3 flat. Caleb Ransaw, Tulane, 4.33. Jacob Parrish, Kansas State, 4.35. Za Frazier from UTSA. They keep cranking out really fast DBs from there. Za Frazier, 4.36. Marquise Siegel from Kansas State, 4.37. Nick Emanwari, who was the Combine Warrior this year, ran a 4.38, safety out of South Carolina, a big guy. Definitely was perhaps the most impressive prospect, at least out of the secondary at the Combine. 4.38 for the big guy. Jade Barron, Texas, 4.39. Robert Longerbeam from Rutgers, 4.39. And Justin Wally out of Minnesota, 4.4 flat. All right. I just want to share some things about what I think about from a coaching perspective. Sometimes I try to put myself in the shoes of some of those coaches, DB coaches that might be sitting in the stands watching these guys run 40s and just watching the whole workouts that are there at the combine and just trying to give you a coach's perspective. Mind you, my thoughts are not every coach's thoughts, but it just kind of gives you a general idea of what a coach might be thinking as they watch this. Couple of things weigh on me, and I don't want to say the word bother me, but if a guy's out there and he's running 4.2, low 4.3s, he's like a complete speed demon, but he didn't have much production in college, wasn't around the football much. Walks, 3-year starter who has 7 or 8 pass breakups and like 1 interception or maybe no interceptions. That's a red flag for me. So if I was a coach sitting in the stands watching this, I would have to go to the tape and say, hey, let me see what was going on with this player and why a guy this gifted physically couldn't find himself around the football enough. Maybe the film shows me, the system that he was in was a little bit difficult for him to be a playmaker. Maybe he was in press all the time, and so you're not going to rack up a bunch of interceptions typically if you're playing press a whole lot. I know what that's like. I would definitely, though, need to go watch some film. All right, people think, the only time you really need to go back and watch some film is when a guy's slow. Let's go watch the film. No, when a guy's speedy and he shows all this athleticism and he just doesn't have much production at all, that's a red flag for me. Because if I'm a coach and we end up getting this guy, and yes, the general manager knows he's fast as all hell. Obviously the owner knows that he's fast as all hell. He got all this pub after the combine about being a fast guy, and people now tend to equate speed with just automatically being a great player. I don't want to be that coach that gets that guy and he's got these issues that are going to be very hard to overcome as to why he wasn't much of a playmaker in college. And now it looks bad on me when I have him here. I can't turn him into a guy that's getting around the football more. Well, he had a college coach for 4 or 5 years, or 3 or 4 or 5 years. They weren't able to do it. He was a high school football player that played DB and wasn't able to do it. It's just not a thing that he does. I've got to see why that is, and are these things correctable? So you're going to see guys that come out every year in combine and they're speed merchants. And a lot of times what happens is they spent a majority of their time running track and being a speed guy. And so this is where they excel. They excel at running, but get them on a football field and they're not highly skilled. They don't have much of a football IQ. And now these guys don't really make plays. And so while it's great that they're fast and it's exciting and it generates publicity, they aren't going to actually be that effective and valuable in your secondary as a football player. All right. It's very difficult to get a guy at this point in time in his career and undo everything that he's been for his time leading into that. I would obviously take on the challenge if it was brought my way. That's just kind of how I am. I think a lot of coaches would be that way. But people would need to temper their expectations because it's going to take time to develop a guy who's not a playmaker, just has not been a playmaker, into a guy that is a playmaker. It won't happen overnight. And when a guy gets a bunch of publicity for being an athlete, that's what fans want. No fans in any sport aren't willing to wait for anything nowadays. They want a player to be that right now, the moment he takes the field. If you take him in the first round, he needs to be a baller right now, or he sucks, or the coaches suck, or the program sucks, or whatever, and people just start going off. We're in a social media era where all types of people have opinions, and they shout them loud, and they will repeat them over and over and over again. So that's just something I was thinking about. Of course, if you get a guy who was a guy that had 10, 12, 15 interceptions in his college football career, and he goes out there and he runs a 4.62 or 4.65 40 or 4.7 40, now you got to go back to the film and watch the film again and say, hey, how was this guy able to make plays? So this is like the reverse. This is like the opposite of what I was just talking about. You do need to go cut the film on and say, hey, I see that this guy was able to make the plays. Was it a product of the system? And now is that system something that's going to be able to exist at the NFL level? And is that player going to be able to be that same player at the next level? In my time of playing, coaching, watching NFL football, there have been a number of guys like that. They were high producers at the college football level. I mean, guys that might have had 8 or 9 interceptions in a season, or they maybe even had double-digit interceptions in the season, and they get to the next level and it just doesn't work out for them. There have been guys like that. I know NC State several years ago had a guy, double-digit interceptions guy. I think he had 10, 11, maybe even 12 in the season, went to the next level and things just didn't work out. I'm not going to say the player's a bad player because a lot of things happen in the NFL that people don't realize. And I don't want to use the word luck, but just for lack of a better term, sometimes you're lucky and you go to the absolute right place and system for you and the way that you play, and a guy can thrive. Conversely, sometimes you get a guy that goes to a system that does not match him at all. And he was a really, really good player. He had the potential to be a really, really good player. But because of where he went, the system that they run and the things that they do, that guy was not able to show his value and his worth. And, sometimes it plays on a guy early in his career, mentally breaks him down. And then, he leaves the original team that drafted him, and then he bounces around the league. And he's just, a combination of other people's impression of him, including teams, plus his impression of himself is he may have lost some confidence, and now he just never really materialized into the player that he needed to be. This is why I really stress that NFL teams need to do a good job of evaluation and not just take a guy because he's athletically gifted or just take a guy because he, was productive in college. You really need to take a look at what he did in college, what type of player he is, and then now how does that match up with what it is that you do? A recent example of that is Derek Stingley. He was obviously a good corner at the college level, right? He started off gangbusters as a freshman and then, kind of fell off a little bit in his second and third year at LSU, but he was a specific type of cornerback. The Houston Texans, and they've, until recently have never been accused of being a solid franchise. They take him and they immediately have him playing cover two. All right. Turned him into a cover two corner in that first year. This is not what that player is. He's not that. He's not a cover two corner. He's not going to just sit there in a flat and jam guys and sink back 17, 18 yards and think that he's going to be the player that everyone saw him be when he entered into college. And he was not what people expected. He was what I expected. I didn't expect that guy to really be a playmaker sitting in a system like that. That system left, in comes DeMeco Ryans, and finally they start running a system that suits Derek Stingley, and now he's got his name up in one of the top young DBs in the league. And that happens more times than people really, really realize. And so that's something to pay attention to as we approach the draft, guys. Don't fall in love with a guy's athleticism. And then also you understand that it matters where a player goes. There are very few times that a guy comes out and he could play in any system anywhere. Can you guys imagine Deion Sanders coming out his rookie season and going and playing for a team that just played strictly cover two, very little man, and kind of just have him sitting in the flat? Do you think he would be the guy that he was today? I don't think so. As great as Deion Sanders is, sure he would have made his plays because he was just like that. But sitting him in the cover two with the skill and athleticism and the experience that he had being a man corner would have been a criminal act. And I see these all the time. So you guys be on the lookout for that as we approach the draft and enter into next football season. One other thing that I do see every year in the draft is just a little bit of character assassination or a massaging through the media that teams agents do. There's a lot of propaganda that's used out there. Again, we're in this social media era. So, agents will throw some money out there and people out there will throw some money out there to get an athlete pubbed up, moved up, hopefully in the draft behind some kind of marketing that is used through the media and particular guys that are draft experts. You see that happening. And then you also see teams that will get some word out there and use a little bit of their influence to chop down a player, hopefully getting him to slide down the board so that they can pick him up. I don't love that at all. I think it's trash that is done, but it's just a business. That's the way that it is. Someone lower down on the board really wants a player and they're fearful that one of the top teams will grab them. So you start getting a little run and rash on some bad news. All right. Kind of falling into that, I'm starting to hear these rumors and things about Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. I'm hearing like little negative stuff coming out on him. The guy's a good football player, guys. All right. He can move. He can play. You get him in the right system, that guy is going to be a playmaker. Now, he didn't run at the combine, and it's just recently been announced that he's not going to run at the pro day. He's nursing a little bit of a hamstring injury. Injuries happen. I think that gets a little bit overblown. There have been guys that I've seen over the course of time, not just a defensive back, but at several different positions that had established themselves on the field as a player at the college level, didn't work out at all throughout the process, and those guys still ended up going where they needed to go. I believe Devontae Smith, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, was one of those guys. Didn't run at the combine. I don't know that he ran at a pro day. Don't recall him doing much in workout-wise. Go pull the film. The guy was an absolute monster on the field, and he did it at Alabama. So, as people try and drop all of this negative news out there for whatever reason that it might be happening about Will Johnson, if any of these smart GMs out there and coaches that are in the draft room that have any kind of influence, cut the film on and watch the guy. Yes, there's always weaknesses when you watch a player, but overall speaking, this is a solid football player that can fit into most systems. Some systems might not be the best for him, but you get him out there, you get him on the field, and this guy is going to be, a playmaker for you. All right. So be on the lookout for that too. All right. You're going to see guys hyped and pubbed that maybe shouldn't be hyped or pubbed. And then you're going to see other guys that are getting knocked down a peg because the forces behind the scenes are trying to work their angle to get a player, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of massaging and strategery and trickery that goes on during this time of year when we're talking about the NFL draft. It's a big business, a lot of money getting passed around. A lot of people are going to hit a payday when we get to that date in May. And so anytime you've got a bunch of money involved, some funny things start to happen. So you guys be on the lookout for that. All right, something for us to talk about. This is for players, also for coaches as well. It's just we're in this offseason, and every offseason I see this, guys, are out. They're lifting their weights. They're doing their drill work. They're working on their agility. They're working on their speed, and that dominates their offseason. I got it. You're trying to train your body. Football is a physical sport. You must prepare your armor for the season that is coming. What a lot of guys fail to do is just really take on the IQ and the mental part of the game. I get it. Football, learning, sitting down and still and trying to pay attention to something, whether it's written on a board or watching a video or having someone explain it to you. God forbid if it's an adult and you're a young guy in high school, it can be boring. I understand it. You want to be moving. You want to be doing something physical. The smart guys, the guys that get it, the guys that move on, overcome whatever boredom they may be feeling, and they learn. Okay, this is a big part and time of the year for you to up your IQ, whether that is learning how your defense works. And when you learn how your defense works, start learning about how some other defenses work. All right. It all fits together. The more you learn about different defenses, the more you understand your defense, the more you just understand defense in general, the philosophies behind it, and the better you're able to position yourself in whatever it is that your team is running. Just have a solid overall understanding of how defenses work. The other thing is, if you're going to be attacked by an offense each and every week, well, man, you really should know what it is they're trying to do. Could you imagine being a soldier going to war and you didn't really study what it is the other unit you're going against is trying to do to you? Get your head blown off, man. All right. All right. So this is not war, but it is strategy. It's a game. You got to understand the other side. You got to understand what the offenses do, why they line up the way that they do, why guys go in motion, why they line up in certain formations, why they take certain splits that they do, why the quarterback does what he does after the ball is in his hands, after he takes the snap, why the running back is lined up where he is. You can't just go out there and just be reacting to all of those things. Now, I get it. Again, it's boring if it's just sitting there being told to you or you're watching a video on it, but, that's the way that it's going to be taught. That's the way that you're going to learn it. So you're going to have to just sit down and eat your vegetables. And you've got to be into that part of it. I see guys ignore the IQ mental part of the game in their offseason. And for all of their weightlifting and running that they did in the offseason, they come back the next season and the results are kind of the same. They fall short of what it is that they want to do. And if you would have just spent a decent amount of time learning the game, you'd be able to react that much faster. It really doesn't do you a whole bunch of good to, develop all of these skills and be quicker and faster if you're not sure where you want to go. Because I don't care how fast you get. I don't care how quick you get. If you aren't sure about where you're supposed to go, what you're seeing, and what you're supposed to do, you will be slow on the football field. All right? I'm just here to tell you that. I've seen 4-2 guys be 4-6 guys because they're just not sure. They're running in the dark. All right? I might have talked about this in a previous podcast, but if you open the door to a room that was fully dark, how would you feel about sprinting from that door straight through the darkness to the other side of the room? It'd be hard for you to break into a full sprint. It might be hard for you to just run. Now, if there's a guy slower than you opening the door to a well-lit room that can see the other end of the room, that guy can run at his full speed, and he'll run faster than you do in that dark room. Don't run in the darkness. And what's the darkness? The darkness is your lack of education on what the defense is supposed to be doing and what the offense is doing to you. Remove that darkness by learning, all right? Jump on all of the resources that you have out there, whether it's your coach, whether it's YouTube videos like the ones I have on this channel, whether it's 101 DB tips, or even better yet, my members area, which I'll talk about at the end of this podcast. Remove the darkness, because you could be fast and strong, but when you go into a dark room, you are reduced to nothing, okay? So guys, don't ignore the IQ mental part of your offseason. It is imperative for you to do that if you want to be the player that you want to be. If you want to grab the numbers, and you guys that write down your goals, some of y'all write them on your bathroom mirror. If you want to hit those goals, you better study this game and up your IQ. I think I've hit that home. All right, time for the mailbag. And again, I appreciate you guys that reach out to me each and every week, that send me the emails with your questions. There's several ways that you could get these across to me. One of the best ways is, if you're watching this on YouTube, is just drop your question in the comment section down below. Love to get comments on here. I'll pick one from there, or you guys can email me, cwilson@alleyedsdbcamp.com. Of course, there's those of you that follow me on Instagram @alleyedsdbcamp, and you send me your messages there. Probably not the best way, because my DMs on All Eyes DB Camp can tend to be a war. There's a good amount of followers there, and I get all kinds of stuff in there. But nevertheless, if that's your mode that you need to contact me with your question, feel free to do that. But of course, all of them are welcome. This week's question comes from Derek from Oregon. How do I keep myself from losing my outside leverage in cover one? Receivers keep beating me on either a slant, and if I try to stop the slant, I get beat outside and lose my leverage. All right. That's not uncommon. All right. It's not uncommon for that to happen. All right. So I'm going to kind of speak to the coaches and the players here as well. If you play corner and you played a good amount of press coverage and you're a coach, you can understand what I'm talking about here. You are playing cover one, and of course, you're trying to keep some type of outside leverage there because you want to, in the course of the route, force that receiver to stay close to where the help is, which might be in the low hole, depending on, how much you're blitzing, but definitely in the post, because in cover one, you have a post safety that's patrolling the middle, getting ready to make a play on anything that's, really within the numbers or the hash or something like that. So you're trying to keep the receiver's routes there. In the process of doing that, what I see a lot happening with cornerbacks is just an overplaying of their outside leverage. All right. And it kind of goes like this. A receiver lines up, a couple of reps, the receiver gets outside of the cornerback, and now he's close to the sidelines, and the coach starts going off on the player because he allowed that guy to get an outside release. All right. I'm going to say this. The leverage is just an alignment. Okay, it's an alignment. So unless you've got some kind of a bracket coverage going where there is immediate help to the inside, and we're really just trying to shrink a guy down, and we're trying to keep him bracketed in between two specific players. So it's kind of like a double coverage. That's what bracket is. I I don't think guys should go overboard in trying to hold that outside leverage. In cover one, just a traditional cover one where you're going to have a safety in the middle of the field who's not just responsible for double teaming and helping with one guy, who's in the middle for any guys that might be coming into, like I said, in between those numbers or those hash marks, depending on what kind of range he has. I think it's important for the corners to get their outside alignment. And if that wide receiver wants to go outside of that corner, he's simply making it difficult for him. But if he gets out there, it shouldn't be the end of the world. And by difficult means that if we align outside, all right, and I don't have video for the sake of this, and mind you, I don't have any video from Derek to actually see what's happening. So I'm just making generalizations here. But if I'm aligned in an outside leverage, I'm half a shade, I'm half a man outside of the wide receiver, and he wants to go outside of me, I don't want to just hop outside and treat it like it's cover two where I'm absolutely got to get this guy inside, because you know what receivers do. They'll make a hard move outside. They'll get the corner to jump outside, and then the receiver will just run straight ahead. So we didn't do anything to affect his route. You know what the corners are going to do when that happens. They're going to open their hips right away. So the receiver widened you. He's going to run those numbers. He's going to run down that line that his coach wants him to run on. And if he beats you out of there, all right, if he gets a step on you, he's then going to stack you. And then he's going to end up outside anyway. All right, he's going to fade away to the sidelines. It's going to make it a long run for the free safety to get there and help you. And now he just essentially beat both of you. And all of this stemmed from you wanting too hard to hold that outside leverage and remain outside of the receiver. Okay, you guys got to think about this. If that wide receiver came and took a super wide split, like let's say a yard or two away from the sidelines, you as a corner would not align outside of that guy. You would move inside. You'd move inside of him. Now you would be in inside leverage alignment, and he takes off outside, and now you've got him trapped to the sidelines. Well, that's essentially what should be happening when you line up in cover one with an outside shade against a normal split by the wide receiver. Yes, he might get outside of you, but if you're patient and you don't hop outside, you either are going to get hands on that guy as he's going outside, or you're going to, by your body position, force him to go super wide. And then where does he end up as he starts trying to run up the field? He is outside of you, but he's a yard or two away from the sidelines. Now you're inside of him, as you would be if he lined up there pre-snap. And now you just run with him down the field, and you have the outside boundary, the sidelines, as another defender for you. And coaches, you got to understand that that's a thing. All right, now we're bracketing that wide receiver with that outside defender, which is the sidelines, and the inside defender, which is the corner, who, yes, allowed the guy to get outside. But if he played his technique right, he made it hard. The receiver either flattened out and couldn't get vertical right away and went outside, and now the DB has him outside, but we've trapped him in between the sidelines and our bodies as corners, okay? What this does allow the corner to do is not go hopping outside, because the other problem that comes from hopping outside because the coach just doesn't want the receiver to get outside is receivers will make a hard move outside and then go down inside on a slant, and it's the easiest pass for them to complete on offense. One hard move outside against a corner that's going to hop outside because he's scared to give up the outside. His coach is yelling at him. So he's gone. He takes a big step outside or a bunch of steps outside. Receiver plants, dives down inside on a slant. Easy completion. Even if you've got a linebacker, an outside linebacker inside sitting in that hook zone, a good quarterback and a good wide receiver will fit that ball in between the corner that hopped outside and that hook defender and get that pass completed for a first down. God forbid if a tackle is missed, could be a big play after that. If you empower the corner, or if corners, you don't go hopping outside, you just sit on that outside shoulder and you kind of hold your patience there, you will see that receiver take that big step outside. You're not hopping. You're simply waiting to see what the next step is going to be. Is that next step going to be him trying to get outside of me, or is it him trying to go back down inside on a slant? You see that next step going inside for the slant. Now you can go get hands on him. You can attach to his hip, and you can be close when the ball arrives, and hopefully we can get a ball knocked down. We could reach to his hands. Even if the ball ends up in his hands, we're close enough to reach in soon thereafter, punch the ball out, or even better, the quarterback's off a little bit. because he's really trying to fit it in there and he sees you close and now he doesn't make the perfect throw. The ball's behind the wide receiver on the slant and maybe it ends up in your hands. But as players, as coaches, we got to stop asking our corners to hop outside and overplay that outside leverage and end up messing themselves. They don't end up covering anything when you do that. Cover one, outside shade, outside leverage is just an alignment. We're going to make it hard for you to go outside. You might get outside, and then we trap you into the sidelines. Now we're using the sideline as a friend, or a guy dives down inside. We're in good enough position to handle that and take away a slant because that is part of our responsibility in cover one. We do need to stop those. That would be nice. Or the guy now decides to go vertical inside. We didn't hop outside. We could get hands on him, move him closer inside, move him closer to the hash, or get him a little closer to our post safety help. And if he's trying to run a seam, it's not right down the field. It's closer to the safety. If he's running a post or a dig or anything across the field, we change the shape of the route, and now we've made it more difficult. All right. I have talked about this extensively in my members area, and in there that comes with, obviously a visual of it. Okay, I show me doing this in training with guys. I show players executing that effectively, and then I show where players didn't execute this effectively. That's the beauty of being in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. There is a link to it down in the description if you want video of what it is I'm actually talking about. If you're listening to this on a podcast, try to visualize this as best I can. And a lot of you guys out there playing this know what I'm talking about because I see this over and over again. It happens quite a bit. So Derek from Oregon, you're not alone. I hope you can take some value from that. And any of you guys out there, if you have any follow-ups to it or any comments or questions about it, you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to hit the comment section down below. Or as I said, hit me up via email, cwilson@alleyeasdbcamp.com. If you have another question pertaining to defensive back play, you can use either one of those things to get that question off there. All right. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Final thing I want to talk about today is the main topic, and that is communication in the secondary. And this was kind of brought home to me listening to Teddy Bridgewater, who, by the way, was the state championship coach for his alma mater here in Miami, Florida, Miami Northwestern, did an outstanding job. They just kind of ran through the competition in their playoff run and then in their state championship game. And it should come as no surprise. I think it was awesome for a guy like Teddy, who's still active in the NFL. I've never seen anything like this before. Still an active NFL player, go through, coach up these players through the year, get all these guys memories and hardware that will never be able to be taken away from them. And then immediately from that, going and playing in an NFL playoff game. Never seen that before in my life. But what Teddy did do was, at the very least, bring back a whole bunch of knowledge and information for the kids at his high school and really teach them the game of football, which I think is outstanding. But listening to him at a coach's clinic that was done down here, just him explaining what he likes to do offensively and exploit the defense either through matchups or their inability to communicate. And that is quite key. I mean, he knows this. At a high school level, you just don't get much communication at the defensive level. If you go to a high school football game or practice and you watch them practice or watch them play, and then you go to an NFL game and watch a practice, you will know that one of the biggest differences, other than the speed of how the guys are moving, is just the amount of communication you get at the NFL level versus what you're getting at the high school level. It is absolutely night and day. So I'm really talking to my high school football players here, as well as guys in college, because there's a lack of communication there as well. I'm going to tell you guys the ways that you are going to up your communication this year and make your entire unit a better defensive unit, a better secondary this year, and it's going to allow you guys to make plays. There are 5 major things you need to communicate when you're out on that field, both pre-snap and post-snap. Number 1 is communicate the formation. If you guys are into watching film, you know one of the number 1 things you're watching on the film is the formations that the team is running. And if that's an important thing for you to be watching on film, then just believe that that is an important thing for you to communicate when that offense either breaks the huddle or lines up and is ready to go. You got to communicate the formation. Corners, one of the best things for you to do is just communicate how many eligible receivers you have on your side. So if the corner on the right side says, hey, I've got two, corner on the left side says, I've got two, then everyone kind of understands what we've got here in terms of a formation. Perhaps during the week, there is a formation that you guys have keyed in on that is a formation that's very strong for the offense, or there's a particular explosive play that they are going to be running out of this formation that you've seen them run, and you want to alert everyone on the defense for it because you guys have a special plan for it. Well, then you might need to call out that specific formation. And don't just keep it a secret. You got to put everyone on alert because you got 11 players over there that could be going through 100 things in their mind. Hell, a guy might have rammed heads with another player on the last play and is kind of a little foggy, and you need to communicate and snap him back into it. Hey, this is that formation. We've got empty. And so now everyone understands that they're in that empty formation, and that play that we're worried about or that the play that we've keyed in on is coming. So you've got to communicate the formation. The next thing you need to do is highlight a key player. If the team you're facing has a guy that is a key player, there's a Tyreek Hill over there, or there's a Travis Kelce, or there's any other kind of an Alvin Kamara or player that really makes things go, and you need to know where he is. Let's say the offense tends to move him around, and a lot of what they do is based on where he lines up. Well, then everyone needs to communicate where that player is. You need to highlight where that player is. If they're running plays based on where he lines up, communicate where he is, and now everyone can kind of have an idea of what is coming their way. A lot of success on defensive football is being able to anticipate certain things coming. Guys that stand out there and the entire playbook is available and all of the routes are available when they line up are going to be slow, and they're going to have a hard time making plays. If you can anticipate only a certain amount of plays coming out of a certain formation or where a guy's lined up, or only a certain amount of routes coming out of an alignment by a player, you're that much better. There are not that many possibilities that you must consider now once the ball is snapped. If by a guy's alignment, we can cut a 10 route tree down into 3 or 4 different routes, how much faster are you going to be? How much better are you going to be when you actually see the route unfolding? So being able to highlight a key player will now get everyone's anticipation up. We know based on our study and what we practice during the week that we're likely to get these certain plays right here because that player is lined up at Y, or he's lined up in the slot, or he's lined up in a stack, or he's lined up in the backfield, whatever the case may be. So number 2 is being able to highlight key player information. Number 3 is being loudly calling out the checks and the coverages. Listen, if you guys played in the secondary, especially as corners, you guys know the frustration of not knowing the call. All right. Offenses don't really huddle up anymore. Okay. So you're out on the field and the calls are coming in off the sideline. If you happen to be that corner that's on the far sideline and you're sitting here waiting for a call from a safety and you don't get it, that is the worst feeling in the world, to just be out there. The ball's about to be snapped. You don't even know what coverage you're in. Now you're out there just winging it. And you'd like to make a play, or at the very least, you don't want to look stupid, but it's hard because you're just out there playing whatever. Everyone else or half the field might be playing something because they did actually get the call, but the safety on your side didn't get the call to you, and you're just out there winging it, all right? As safeties, I'm speaking to y'all first and foremost, loudly call out the coverages, or make sure you get that player's attention and you get that signal to them. A lot of times you got code words for your coverages. Make sure that player communicates. Likewise, I think the corners and safeties should have some kind of system where the safety gets the corner's attention. The corner obviously a lot of times doesn't want to take his eyes off of the offense just in case the ball is snapped in a hurry, but the corner should be able to have some kind of a signal back to the safety that indicates that he got the call or he got the check. Tapping the helmet, a thumbs up, whatever the case may be, so the safety knows, okay, he got the information. I can move on to whatever else I got on my checklist pre-snap. But whatever it is, the calls need to be made. They need to be heard. They need to be understood. They need to come in fast. And then also if there is a check because of a motion and a shift. Well, another thing that I heard Bridgewater talk about a lot was all of the motions and shifts that they do to try and create confusion for the defense. Because guys aren't going to communicate, or, there's a chance you get the wrong check or a guy doesn't know what to do. First of all, know the checks. Second of all, communicate those checks. Maybe you know it and you forgot to communicate it. There's no forgetting to communicate it. You knowing it and not communicating it to the guys on your side of the field that need to know it is the same as you not knowing it. Because if you're playing the right coverage, but those guys are playing the wrong coverage, there's a chance they're going to get beat. And now that's bad for everyone. And it really started with you not communicating. So communicate coverages and checks. Another thing is communicate scheme and technique. So sometimes you get into formations and, there are certain things that need to be done in that. So, for instance, bunch formations or stack formations. Let's start with a stack formation where two guys are going to come over and there's a certain, I don't want to say code, but there's a certain way that you guys are going to handle that stack formation. All right. The player down has the front guy or the back guy or vice versa. The defensive back that's off the ball has the guy that's in the back, whatever the case may be. You guys need a code word for that and you need to get that communicated. Or two guys are close together and you need to call banjo. You need to communicate that. Say it every time. Don't sit there and think that a guy, he should know that, he knows it, whatever. It's not going to hurt you to communicate each and every time. It puts you in the practice of speaking every time. And second, nothing is left to chance. You never know what's going on in a guy's mind. Communicate, get those words into his head so we all know we're on the same page. And again, you hear it, put the signal up, thumbs up, whatever, tap your helmet, and everyone knows we're on point. Communication is key. And then the final thing is once that ball is snapped, especially when we're in, zone defenses, a lot of teams run zone matchup schemes now. You have to call out routes. That's the biggest thing that I see happen at the high school level is that players will play out there and they will be silent after the ball is snapped. They act like man defenders when they are in zone. If a guy is going into the flat, you're not responsible for the flat, but there is a flat, there's supposed to be a flat defender. You need to call out that route. Okay. One of the biggest route combinations that require communication is smash. All right. A lot of teams make what is known as a China call. This was something that I struggled with when I moved from Long Beach State to the University of Miami. When I was at Long Beach State, strictly man. We played a lot of man coverage. When I got to Miami, we were, at least in the early years, a cover two team. And when you got a smash combo, you needed to yell out China. And I'll be damned, there were a lot of times I just failed to call that out. And it used to piss the coaches off. It would piss the linebackers off. It would piss a lot of people off because I'm not giving them what they need to be successful on a particular play. You've got to get your communication down. You have to take an interest in that. Call out routes. If you need to call a route in to get an inside defender ready for what's coming his way, you need to be able to do that. You can't just be out there and be a silent player, be a selfish player. You have to be able to talk. And all of this comes post snap. And it requires some practice because once you start moving out there, your mind might start focusing on how you're moving and you stop thinking about communicating or trying to help other guys out in the defense. In zone, I say this all the time, and I also mention it in the book, 101 DB Tips. In zone, you cover with your mouth. In man, you cover with your feet. So if you're playing a lot of zone, and most teams run zone, if you're not able to communicate and call out the routes that are happening in front of you as they're happening, you have zero value to your defense in your secondary as a player on that field. If you cannot communicate post-snap, you're a liability, right? That's just the long and short of it. So get into the habit of calling out routes when they're happening in front of you. One of the best ways you can do that when you're not actually out on the football field or at practice, because again, we're in the off season, so you may not be running actual practices, are getting the film on, watching a game of a team you played against, or maybe a team that you will play this year, and just practice it while you're watching film. Say it out loud. Watch the routes happening. Say in, China, 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 China. Out, curl, whatever the case may be, whatever the calls are that you guys are supposed to have on defense, you can practice that watching film. Might sound corny to you, all right? But whatever the case may be, you're trying to improve and be better. So forget about being corny. Forget about what someone else might think about it. When you're out there helping your team make plays, then who cares about if it was corny? And I've got this final thing for you. When you communicate and you help guys on your team be in position where they need to be, they either make plays, and when they make plays, the offense will steer away from them and send some action your way. Or if they're not making plays because you're not helping them out and you're not communicating, the offense will just continue to attack that zone for that player and you won't see any action. If you want to see some action, you've got to get the other guys around you to be successful so that the offense can start avoiding them and start heading in your direction if you've got a selfish state of mind. One way or another, though, you need to be communicating post-snap and being able to put guys in the proper position to make plays. All right, those are the 5 things that you need to focus on in terms of communication. Going through them again, it's communicating formation. It's communicating where a highlighted player should be. So like a top player on their team, a key player, highlight that. Number 3 is calling out the coverages and the checks. Number 4 is communicating a scheme technique. So something like banjo when they're close, when players are close together, when receivers are close together, banjo or any other calls you may have for bunch, stack, whatever the case may be. So call out your scheme technique. And then finally, calling out routes. You got to call those routes out. Communication doesn't end once the ball is snapped. As a matter of fact, it might even be more important to talk after that ball is snapped to kind of let guys know what's going on around them, behind them, etc. You just think about it as, again, I'm going to make a war analogy here. You guys are down in a foxhole and there are guys ahead of you as you're, moving on the enemy, and someone comes up behind one of, your troop mates, and they're about to fire on him, and you just sit there and you're silent. Well, now your, fellow troop's going to get his head blown off, and, things aren't going to be good. And, once they eliminate him, they're coming for you. So be able to communicate, let that guy know there's an attack coming, and he can prepare himself for what is about to happen to him, and you guys can help each other out. But I think as a secondary, if you're listening to this by yourself, get this information or send this video to the rest of your guys in your secondary and say, hey, this is the kind of team, kind of secondary we need to be this season coming up so that we all eat, we all make plays, and they can call us the best secondary ever. And we can do our part to help our team win, help our defense be the best that it can be. Communicate those 5 things. And I promise you, as a unit, you guys will be better. As a coach, if you emphasize this with your players, there's no way your defense, your secondary does not play better this year. All right. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Indy Drills Podcast. I hope you found some value in this. If you did, go ahead and share and like the video. As well as I told you guys, subscribe if you've not done so already so you don't miss out on another great edition of the Indy Drills Podcast like this one on your way out, guys. In the link, in the description down below, I'll have links to the Indy into a 101 DB Tips book. You can get the soft version, and version 2 has just come out, or you can get the ebook version. The ebook version does not have the 100 passing terms, but you get that delivered to you right away. I have a link to both down in the description below. Also, the All Eyes DB Camp members area, over 200 videos in there going over coverage schemes, techniques, coverage analysis, coverages, explained. On top of that, I've got quizzes in there, live discussions. You can communicate back and forth with anyone in that members area. And we're, quite a few members in there right now. We're approaching 200 members in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. So we're growing fast, man. And everyone's upping their IQ and getting themselves ready for a really, really great season. So if you're trying to be a baller this year, or you're trying to be a really, really much improved coach, find yourself in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. Have a link to that down in the description below. Once again, thanks you guys for joining me and watching the Indy Drills Podcast. See you guys next time. All Eyes DB Camp, consistency breeds results.